Hello everyone, I'm Will Ryan and welcome to another Top 25. Last time, we took a look at 25 terrible anime that you'd never want to flash across your TV screen, but today we're going to look at 25 good anime that probably just haven't had the chance yet. So let's get it going. These are 25 of the best anime that you've never seen. The simple fact is that there are thousands of anime titles out there, with dozens more being released each year. With services like Crunchyroll and great studios like Funimation, it's gotten pretty easy to track the best of the best, but still, hidden gems fall through the cracks all the time, and still others just get lost to the annals of history. And how would you ever find out about them unless you had a friend who could tell you about it, or, maybe an internet video to help you out? So today that's exactly what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the top 25 series that have just been lost, that don't get the mainstream attention that maybe they should. So let's get this started. This is the top 25 best anime that you've never seen.
Number 25. Gankutsuo, The Count of Monte Cristo.
A classic work of fiction commonly studied in literature classes is not exactly what you'd expect someone to make an anime out of, but surprise, it exists!
Gankutsuo is an artistic venture all its own. I've never seen such brilliant 2D art and uniquely beautiful vistas like this before, nor do I imagine I will ever again. It's probably not for everyone, but I freaking love it. The story is an inversion of the classic Count tale, with the entire story taking place from the perspective of Albert de Morcerf, son of one of Edmond Dante's betrayers. The former Dante's, now the Count himself, takes on a bizarre, cold, vampiric appearance, unlike that of the classic novel, which is eventually explained through a twist only an anime could provide. There is some regrettably bad early 2000s CGI, but hey, it was the early 2000s. No one could help themselves back then. If you love The Count of Monte Cristo as much as I do, you owe it to yourself to check out what another author can do with the same material 160 years later. I give it a definite thumbs up. You can find the series on the cheap at Amazon or stream it on Crunchyroll. Either way, don't miss it. Number 24. Number 6.
Huh. That was a confusing introduction. Probably could have worded that better. Anyway, what if Huckleberry Finn and Tom Sawyer were gay? Well, I still don't know because Japan won't tell me. Wait.
Number 6 is an interesting series about coming of age, finding yourself, and deciding who you want to be in society. After naive, idealistic Shion discovers a government cover-up, he is rescued by Rat, a poor boy from the slums who he took in one night as a child. The two become close and seem to develop feelings for each other, but sadly, unlike the manga, the anime can't seem to pull the trigger on actually allowing its main character to be gay. Just when you think they're gonna go for it, Shion chooses a girl who sexually shamed him at the beginning of the series because, dick brain? It makes very little sense, and although I still definitely give the series a strong recommendation, I am left disappointed by the refusal to let an obviously gay protagonist just be gay. Hell, Nabari had no qualms with it, so what's the excuse here? Still, it's a very cool anime of very high quality and definitely worth checking out. You can pick it up on Amazon or give it a look at Crunchyroll as well. Number 23. The Place Promised in Our Early Days.
Makoto Shinkai has been praised by many as the next Miyazaki, and while I personally don't believe that he's earned that mantle quite yet, he did create one great film prior to the recent Your Name that I had the pleasure of personally discovering.
The place promised in our early days centers around three friends, two boys and a girl, who bond over the course of a summer while working on a plane owned by one of the boys' grandfather. They promise each other that one day they will fly over the fictional Hokkaido Tower and see all of Japan, which has been divided down the middle. Tragically, the girl, Sayuri, disappears, shattering the two boys' friendship and launching them into separate futures that converge one final time to rescue her from a tragedy that has plagued her for years. The film is beautifully composed and drawn, and has so much charm emanating from it that it cannot be ignored. Place might be a bit light on substance, but it more than makes up for it with a brilliant musical score and soaring emotions spread across years of hope and determination. If you ever want to be encouraged that your dreams, no matter how impossible, can be achieved, this movie is definitely for you, and the ones you love. Unfortunately, if you want to own a hard copy of this one, you're likely to end up forking over a whole bunch of money for a new copy or rolling the dice on a used one. You're probably better off sticking with Crunchyroll this time. Man, they're awesome. Number 22. Planetes.
Now, we did take a look at the first two episodes of this show on one of our cover-by-cover episodes, but I couldn't help but include it on this list because it is really good and still very much out of print, and therefore, no one really knows about it. But to be honest, that might be with a little bit of good reason.
Planetes is a hard science fiction series with a bit of humor and characters thrown in to match. It focuses heavily on the science of actual space travel and the minute details of what it might be like. Hardcore HSF fans probably find it too light in that regard, but as far as I see it, the reason the show hasn't had more success is because it is so grounded and realistic, at least as realistic as it can be. There's no real flair or style to any of it, it's just a story of astronauts on a space station. Granted, the stories it does tell are fantastic and should definitely be seen, but without the flash of its other contemporaries, it kinda fell into obscurity. Unfortunately, that obscurity has stuck after Bandai jettisoned it for good, so unless you want to fork over $150 for a used copy, finding a friend to borrow it from might be your only option. Or break the law and pirate it. Whichever. Number 21. No Game, No Life.
Have you ever wondered what a series about gamers would look like if it wasn't pathetic and pandering? Do you despise Felicia Day because she's obviously not a nerd and is only exploiting her accidental fan base for as much money as she can, even though she completely reviles them? Well, me too. But let's talk about the former rather than the latter.
No Game, No Life is about a brother and sister who have become NEETs since the death of their parents and play cooperatively as a single competitor known as Blank in every online game imaginable, the top player on almost every single leaderboard. They are unknowingly challenged by the god of a parallel universe, Tet, and when they defeat him, they are immediately transported to his world of games and challenged with surviving. The series catalogs their comedic trials and tribulations carried out through games of increasing difficulty in a world where all violence has been abolished by the god Tet, and all conflicts must be resolved via games. It's a fun series with comedy aplenty and genuinely great dramatic moments a la Ace Attorney, which the show pays hilarious homage to on two separate occasions. The only real problem, and I do admit this is a definite drawback, is that the series as it currently exists only accounts for the first arc of what is clearly a much larger story, and the only word on a follow-up is an upcoming animated film. Will there be more of this series? Will Madhouse pull their heads out of their ass and try to make good money for once? No one really knows for sure. So in the end, you might only end up watching what could easily be viewed as a prolonged ad for the light novel series. Still, the art and animation quality are exceedingly high, and there's far too much fun to be had for me to disregard it solely on those grounds. The Blu-rays and DVDs are rising in price on Amazon, but you can still check it out on Crunchyroll for no additional cost. Either way, make sure you see it while you still can. Number 20. Ergo Proxy.
I will be the first one to hate on Brewston Edgewell characters and super dark and gritty series, and no one is more sick and tired of the post-apocalyptic dystopian setting than me. So when I enjoyed Ergo Proxy and couldn't even put it down, no one was more happy than I was.
Ergo Proxy is a Blade Runner-inspired story that actually works for once. It's set in the futuristic domed city of Ramdo, where, much like Blade Runner, the series is kicked off by murders being committed by androids, or, as the show calls them, auto-raves, who are becoming self-aware. However, this self-awareness is not some kind of Ghost in the Shell commentary we've seen a million times over. Instead, it's the result of the Cogito virus, which is being spread to autoraves that come into contact with a recently unearthed proxy. The proxies are ancient, angelic, godlike beings that humans of this future don't understand and want to exploit in order to ensure their future safety. With this setup, the world, its archetypes, and its themes all feel somewhat familiar, but they're also brand new when they're put together in such a different way. Riel, our goth protagonist, is far from a cliched broodlord and could actually be best compared to the Major from Ghost in the Shell. She eventually joins up with a mosque refugee, Vincent Law, and their quest to uncover the mysteries behind his alleged pilgrimage that Vincent can't remember, and the secrets of the proxies begins. The show does have some issues, as the story does take a few episodes to get going, after which its primary setting is shelved in favor of a sweeping, landmarkless wasteland a la Mad Max, and the ending can feel a bit underwhelming as many questions aren't answered in favor of slightly forced social commentary. Once again though, the fact that I enjoyed this series was such a wonderful event that I can't help but sing its praises despite these flaws. Throw in a fantastic opening song and animation, and you can guarantee I'll be remembering this one for a long time to come. You can stream it on Funimation.com or pick it up on Amazon for around $20. You will be glad you did. Number 19. Shiki.
If you're familiar with our earlier videos at all, you might be confused as to why this one is on the list when we gave it an uncharacteristic 3 episodes on cover by cover, but still said we wouldn't continue watching. Well, that's because a funny thing happened after I was convinced to give it a second chance. I loved it!
Okay, maybe I didn't absolutely love every single thing about it, but Shiki has far more to offer than can easily be glimpsed in its first few episodes. This is a series that is telling a story on the scope of an entire town. A lot of characters have important roles, and it takes a while to set up all those characters properly. It's about how several characters from completely different backgrounds, perspectives, and lifestyles try to combat the infiltration of their small town by evil vampires that want to prey on them, and all the pressures they face on that path. Also with lots of blood and genuinely unsettling horror atmosphere. With clever tactics, careful calculation, and eventual alliance, they do everything they can to combat the evil that pushes them to the verge of annihilation. If you like serious vampire horror, it's definitely for you. If you like epic stories with a lot of characters that takes its time to deliver a truly fantastic experience, it's a must-see. The only real issue is that the ending is roughly 75% successful at accomplishing what it sets out to do. Without spoiling anything, there's a portion of it that relates to a certain character's actions that falls flat and ends up having the opposite impact of how we view them. Still, you should go out of your way to find this one. It's worth the effort. Thanks to the Save Edition from Aniplex, the entire thing can be had at Amazon for under $20, and you can find it streaming both at Funimation.com and Hulu. Take your time, and you will eventually uncover a gem well worth the wait. I guarantee it. Number 18. Tiger and Bunny.
Finally, a superhero robot anime. Oh man, it friggin' took long enough. Wait, what? Oh, this is a parody of superhero robots series? Well, even better.
Tiger and Bunny introduces us to a world where superheroes are not only real, but are sponsored by large companies in a year-long competition to be the best hero they can be. Wild Tiger, an aging one now past his prime, fails to keep up with the reigning champions Sky High, or any other top contenders for that matter, and soon finds himself out of a job. However, he ends up being paired with brash, cocky newcomer Barnaby Brooks Jr., who he derisively nicknames Bunny, and the two are off to the races as the first superhero team ever. The story is mainly a satire of superheroes and what might actually happen if they were real in our current reality TV-obsessed world. However, it's also a great underdog story with great buddy cop chemistry between the leads as they constantly clash over what makes a great superhero, representing the gap between old school chivalry and infectious, self-aggrandizing showmanship. The show avoids many pitfalls and cliches of similar stories to rise above with its completely original take on the genre, coupled with overflowing charisma and charm. Basically, if you don't like it, there might be something wrong with you. You can find it on Hulu or Viz streaming, and it's still pretty pricey on Amazon, so those are probably gonna be your best bets. Give it a look and prepare to enjoy the ride of a lifetime. Number 17. Sword of the Stranger.
Completely switching gears for a bit, I would like to talk about one of my all-time favorite genres, the Wandering Ronin.
Akira Kurosawa changed the film world forever with post-shogunate titles like Seven Samurai, Yojimbo, and The Hidden Fortress. These classics changed American culture forever when they were adapted into The Magnificent Seven, A Fistful of Dollars, and freaking Star Wars! There's a very good reason for that too. Akira Kurosawa is one of the greatest directors of all time, and his legacy speaks for itself. In his wake, an entire film era of samurai stranded by circumstance after the fall of the shogunate was created, and across the decades, it has all led to the genre love letter known as Sword of the Stranger. This film doesn't try to do anything wild that rocks the boat, instead settling for the typical tale of a wandering ronin dragged into a heroic journey to save a child. What it does best, however, is just about everything else. It hosts one of the greatest film scores of all time and includes what can unequivocally be called the greatest animated sword fight ever. The rest of the film has a few exciting sequences, but can drag on for a bit in the middle as it cuts back and forth between several characters that don't particularly matter until the very end. This can bore some and definitely hurts the overall quality of the film, but the rest of its virtues and peerless accomplishments more than make up for it. If you want a simple tale of stoic heroism and some of the most exciting anime action you've ever seen, or if you just love this genre as much as I do, you can't miss this one. Luckily, Funimation finally released the film earlier this year, and it can both be found on Amazon.com and streamed on the Funimation website. Happy viewing, everyone!
Out of my way!
Number 16. LR, licensed by royalty.
Man, James Bond is so cool, isn't he? I mean, the whole concept of the super suave British spy is just a great one. I mean, yeah, there's a certain level of cheesiness to it, but it's still a lot of fun. So what could be better than an anime all about British spies doing covert operations with a little bit of silliness thrown in? Well, several series because it's number 16 on this list, but that doesn't stop it from being awesome.
Yeah, this is another entry that we looked at in Season 3 of Cover by Cover, but it's very deserving. The adventures of cooler than cool tough guys Jack Hoffner and Ro Rickenbacker take them to all the tropes of the British secret agent that everyone loves. Cool gadgets, femme fatales, seduction, big-time set pieces, hilariously impossible disguises, and irresistible charm. However, it also brings its own unique brand to the table through these new characters that are still all their own. The musical score, one that spends its time reveling in the classic rock music of the 60s and 70s, couldn't be matched by any previous spy story that didn't span the entirety of those decades. It's somewhat shocking to see such a faithfully reverent period piece in anime of all genres, but here you have it. It does have its points of serious drama like all great spy stories, but it never loses the ability to make you smile no matter the circumstance. Still, despite all that, a lot of it is quite familiar, and for super fans of the genre, it may feel a little bit like a retread, but anyone else looking for a love letter to what they love will feel right at home. On the unfortunate side of things, this is a series with quite a price on its head since it was stranded by Geneon USA's closing. Fucking Geneon! Still, you can easily find it streaming on assorted sites through a Google search. Here's hoping it gets re-released someday soon, though. It would be well deserved. Number 15. Ghost Stories English Dub.
You know, it's surprising sometimes how something can get lost to history, yet still remain in the public consciousness somehow. I've talked to a lot of people who have heard about this series, but yet somehow never seen it. Well, guess what? It's easier now than it's been in a very, very long time. So the excuses are over, people.
Ghost Stories started off in Japan as a boring, unremarkable, unpopular series that no one in the US wanted to distribute. Not even a little bit. Finally, a long while later, after much disappointment, ADV Films delivered an ultimatum to Aniplex. They would license the series, but they would also retain undisputed control over the English dub. Desperate to get the series out of Japan, where it had significantly failed, they took ADV's lowball offer and agreed to their terms. What came of this desperate deal made in the 11th hour is one of the most hilarious improv comedy experiments to date.
Can we go upstairs?
Sure,
Yeah.
but don't bother them.
When this bitch kicks, I'm moving to Vegas.
Satsuki, Ketchiro, help me with your mother, will ya?
Okay. There's nothing to be afraid of, teacher. Monsters only get evil people like Republicans, and we're not old enough to vote.
The voice cast, spearheaded by Greg Ayres and Monica Rial, rewrote every character in their own images and turned each episode into a laugh-a-minute joke track, crossing over into every arena of comedy. Ayres rewrote his character, Rio, as a stereotypical Jew to match his own comedic sensibilities, and Monica Rial changed her girl into an evangelical Christian, constantly trying to convert everyone. The dialogue became politically incorrect very quickly, but the voice actors never looked back, and ADV was more than happy to let them go nuts. The only issue with the series in this form is that the jokes are so saturated and constantly firing on all cylinders that it can prevent binge watching to a significant degree. I myself tend to get laughed out after 4 to 5 episodes at a time, and that's a definitive sign that the wholly improvised script is just a bit too frenetic. Still, when you can now find this series for under $30 on Amazon and streaming on Crunchyroll, yes, the English dub is on Crunchyroll, there's no reason to not rush out and find it today. When your face hurts and you're doubled over from too much laughing, you'll know you made the right decision. Number 14. Eden of the East.
Eden of the East. I still remember when I reviewed it way back in Animerica Season 2, but it, for some reason, keeps ricocheting back into my mind to this very day. So, there's gotta be a good reason for that, right?
Eden of the East tells the story of several agents given all-powerful cell phones connected to an AI named Juiz that can grant their every wish, so long as it is pursuant to saving Japan and making it glorious again.
Glorious! No, I won't give in till I'm victorious. And I will defend.
Yeah, not too sure about that one. But anyway, the story centers around Takizawa, one of the 12 selected Selasau agents chosen by the unseen Mr. Zero to raise Japan up from the mire it currently finds itself in and make it awesome again. His adventure quickly crosses paths with a girl named Saki who becomes irrevocably entwined in his life and starts to fall in love with him. Throughout the series, there are many twists and turns that I wouldn't want to spoil for you, but this does bring me to the one great problem with the story as a whole and puts it so low on the list. The 11-episode series ends on a rather inconclusive note, wrapping up the smaller story it was telling, but leaving every single greater mystery hanging. The story then concludes with 2 films that progressively disappoint more and more as they go on, leading to a frustrating cop-out ending that does absolutely nothing to truly end the story in a satisfying way. Despite these issues, however, the show can easily be recommended on its own merits as an entertaining, intriguing, Japanese-style Jason Bourne-inspired adventure. It's on Amazon for the cheap, and it can be streamed on Hulu as well. If you want the movies, you'll be shelling out a bit more cash, but I recommend watching the series first to find out if it is indeed for you. Either way, don't let it slip by. Number 13. Sunday Without God.
Are you looking for something completely new? Something you've never seen before? Something strange and different in a way that we haven't seen in quite a long time? Then you should definitely check out Parasite the Maxim, and then watch Sunday Without God.
Sunday Without God introduces a world where God apparently abandoned humanity at some unknown point in the past, leaving people without the ability to have children or die. Instead, even after a person's death, they continue to walk around as if nothing happened and operate as normal while slowly decaying physically and mentally. In addition to this event, a supernatural race of beings known as gravekeepers arrived to truly bury the dead, as only their blessed grave-digging shovels can truly lay people to rest once and for all. The story begins when a mysterious gunslinger arrives in the hometown of our main character, a little girl named Ai, and shoots up everyone and everything. Sounds wonderful, doesn't it? Once she realizes that everyone in her town has long since died, she then sets out on a mission with the gunslinger she believes to be her father to fulfill her destiny and learn what it means to be herself. Almost from the beginning, the story takes many unexpected turns and is by no means a conclusive full story, but it doesn't really need to be in order to tell the stories it does. Instead, we're introduced to several characters we come to care about and don't want to die. It's an emotionally charged journey that takes you through many highs as well as lows. I've seen some significant hate for this series, but it usually ends up being completely unfair and totally misrepresentative of the series as a whole. At the very least, I recommend checking it out for something very different from your typical anime narrative. The Blu-ray series is pretty pricey, but once again, you can find it streaming on Crunchyroll and enjoy it to your heart's content. I know I certainly did. Number 12. Naoki Urasawa's Monster.
You know, a lot of the great anime nowadays just aren't dark and serious in a real way. Yeah, Attack on Titan definitely brought that tone roaring back, but it still couldn't do so in a realistic setting. So when I think about dark, serious shows set in the real world, making a commentary about the whole of humanity, there is no finer example that I can produce than Naoki Urasawa's masterpiece, Monster.
Monster brings us to 1980s Germany and a hospital where Japanese emigrant Dr. Kenzo Tenma is a brilliant neurosurgeon constantly under political pressure and sway from the hospital director, who is also the father of his fiancée. No coincidence. When he makes what he believes to be the morally correct decision one night to save the life of a young boy over operating on the town's mayor, he loses everything and eventually discovers, nearly a decade later, that he didn't save an innocent child, but a mass-murdering maniac. Devastated and convicted by his past actions, he begins a one-man crusade to track down and stop the boy once and for all. Unlike the past couple entries, Monster is nothing if not complete. It is unequivocally the most faithful adaptation of all time, almost exclusively composed of scenes taken straight from the pages of the original manga. And at 74 episodes, it is no small journey. The series was originally licensed and completely dubbed in English by Viz Media, but when the first box set failed to meet sales expectations, they shelved it indefinitely, only very recently releasing it for streaming on their website. Overall, the series is meticulous, complex, and definitely worth the time spent on its incredible tale. However, this does result in an admittedly deliberate pace that might be too slow for some, and a palpably dour, oppressive atmosphere which, though effective, can also drag you down the longer you watch. However, the show is a once-in-a-lifetime effort, most likely never to be repeated, and for that reason alone, you owe yourself at least a glance. Just be prepared for one of the darkest descents into humanity ever animated. You will not be coming up for air anytime soon. Number 11. Hikaru no Go.
If I told you about a young boy who's trying to be the best at a certain game, who then gets possessed by an ancient spirit who was also the master of that game in his time, what show would first jump to mind?
It's time to duel!
And that's extremely unfortunate, because there's an infinitely better series with almost the exact same premise that was so good, it reignited a renaissance in Japan for the game of Go. I'm talking, of course, about Hikaru no Go.
Hikaru no Go follows a boy named Hikaru, not surprisingly, who stumbles upon an old Go board in his grandfather's attic and touches a supernatural bloodstain, causing him to become possessed by Sai, a Go master from ages past who was assassinated by his jealous rival. Unlike the show of children's card games fame, Sai never takes control of Hikaru or forces him to do anything. The boy is also by no means a competent Go player when the series begins, and only begins playing in earnest at the urging of Sai. Over the course of the series, we follow Hikaru along his Go journey from childhood through young adulthood as he aspires to become one of the best players in Japan. He quickly makes a rival of Akira Toya by defeating him at Sai's command. Unbeknownst to the two, Akira is a boy who was forced into the game at an extremely young age by his grand champion father and currently plays at a professional level. This series, like Shiki, is very hard to pin down and describe without pigeonholing it because it explores so many different aspects of growing up, chasing dreams, facing reality, friendship, grief, achievement, and true happiness. Unlike Yu-Gi-Oh!, which is, at best, a barely watchable children's series, Hikaru no Go is a fantastic story that can be enjoyed by anyone, young or old. The only reason it doesn't rank higher on this list is because the story, unlike almost any other series ever released here in the West, is inextricably entrenched in Japanese culture. Without at least a modest understanding of Japanese language, social mores, and society in general, the show becomes confusing and it's easy to get lost. It's nowhere near as immediately accessible for a general audience as most other anime, and for that reason, it may not appeal to everyone. However, those that can keep up will find one of the most rewarding, powerful stories ever told about a game, because it's about far more than that. It's a journey of the soul. You can find this show streaming on Viz's site or at Hulu, though no physical copies of the anime series have ever been released stateside. Definitely don't miss this one though. More than any other anime on this list so far, it is an absolute must-see.
Well, here we are, guys. It's top 10 time again. But before we move forward, I do want to emphasize something that I think is very important. These 10 entries are largely based on my personal experiences when talking to anime fans. Over the last several years, I've been to a lot of conventions. I've spoken to dozens of people personally and stood in front of crowds cumulatively numbering in the thousands. And yet for the 99% majority of those people, these titles have largely slipped by unnoticed. So I know that at times it will be hard for you to believe this, but remember, I've seen it myself. So with that said, let's get this train to the station. These are the top 10 anime you've never seen. Maybe.
Number 10. Angel Beats.
Hey, why not kick things off with a title most of you won't believe isn't well known? Angel Beats is Key's short series based on a netherworld not very dissimilar to our own, but with a few scary exceptions.
Angel Beats is about an afterlife populated by two groups of people. The first, a mindless army of drone high school students who have lost their ability to deal with the afterlife, who are actually long-lost souls with no autonomy or knowledge of who they once were, trapped in this limbo for all eternity. And the Resistance, led by a girl named Eurypie, who refuses to die and pass on. They're opposed by a little girl christened Angel, who apparently seeks to oppose them at every turn. Yeah, I know. That's hella dark for a basic premise, but hey, the fun's about to start. When Otonashi, a former high school graduate, arrives with no idea of how he got there or any memory of who he was, he is immediately killed by the Angel, only to awaken in the school's medical area completely unharmed. Once he finally accepts what's going on and joins up with Eurypie's resistance, it's off to the races. I cannot go on without mentioning that Angel Beats is one of the most beautiful series I've ever seen. The art is impeccable, the cinematography and scene composition top-notch, and the anime is on the level of a high-budget anime film for the entire duration. The story is quite deliberate in the beginning, but the gaps in the greater plot are filled with character development, genuine fun, and smaller stories you can't look away from. All the way up until the end, it is definitely one of the best anime I've ever seen. However, the final 2 episodes are something of a mess. I would never say that the preceding majority of the series was poorly paced or misguided, but this show desperately needed 4 or 5 more episodes at the very least, if not another 13. I'm fully confident they could have made it awesome. It's a low point to end the series on for sure, but as it is with a series like Soul Eater, which I would argue has the worst anime ending of all time, the journey is far, far more important than the destination. So regardless of my squabbles with how the show is forced to abruptly end itself, I would say Angel Beats is a definite must-watch for everyone. Check it out on Crunchyroll or Hulu today. Number 9. Bakano.
Who doesn't love a Prohibition-era romp? Who doesn't love going back to a simpler time when gangsters were so much more quaint and kitsch? Well, you've never seen anything like what you get with Bakano. Straight to you from the director of Do-Ra-Ra-Ra. Do-Ra-Ra-Ra. Yep.
Bakano follows several characters who all come into contact with a demonic elixir of immortality only to end up immortal themselves. Through many hilarious and even graphically violent misadventures involving several gangs, a rogues gallery of memorable villains, and a set of not quite heroes, a legend is born. There's a certain frenetic insanity that pervades Bakano, something you'd think would hurt it, but instead ends up being its signature. You never know what's going to happen next, and when so much of the cast can't die, that's a remarkable accomplishment. Thugs, Tommy guns, train robbery, a guy named Jacuzzi Splot. Director Takahiro Omori and writer Noboru Takagi truly get everything about this type of story and how to make it fun for everyone. I mean, not for the whole family, but everyone watching at the very least. I can't say much more at the risk of spoiling a constantly twisting, turning tale, so I won't. Unfortunately, physical copies are extremely expensive, and no site officially streams it at the moment, so your best bet will be those unofficial sites that post the episodes somewhat illegally. Sorry, that's all I got. That's why no one's seen this incredible show. Number 8. Mononoke.
Have you ever stumbled across a series that's so unique and great that you just have to have it? You have to have a copy for yourself that you can show to your friends and watch. But for some reason, it seems like it's just never gonna make it here, and so you have to settle for watching it in shitty quality on shitty sites. But then, one day, out of flopping fucking nowhere, there it is! Well, to that question I say, hell yes, and for me, that anime is Mononoke.
Mononoke actually started much earlier, before Mononoke, in an anthology film series, Samurai Horror Tales. The main event of the collection was the standalone film Goblin Cat. It was in this tale that Japanese audiences were first introduced to the Medicine Seller, an enigmatic character who definitely never showed up to sell anyone any medicine. Instead, he arrived at places in great distress, haunted by spirits known as Mononoke. In the wake of the success for Samurai Horror Tales, audiences everywhere fell in love with the Medicine Seller. With his unique look and the film's never-before-seen pastiche art style, Goblin Cat stood head and shoulders above the other films in the set. The demand was so great for more stories involving this mysterious, unnamed hero that just one short year later, Mononoke blasted onto Japanese television screens in the same fashion the movie smashed its way into people's memories. It was due to this extremely localized demand that the series is, like Hikaru no Go, fundamentally intrinsic to Japanese culture, specifically ancient Japanese culture, and not simply a widely accessible retelling of it. So I was shocked and overjoyed to find that Cinedigm, of all places, licensed the original Japanese edition and released it here in the States for the still shockingly low price of $12.99. The series itself is an anthology of several Medicine Seller adventures, most appropriate I think, ending with a reinterpretation of the original Goblin Cat legend that put it on the map. To say this series should not be missed is an understatement, and to call it anything less than great is a disservice. You must get this series before it disappears for good. But if you don't care to own it, you can also watch it on Crunchyroll right now. Seriously, once you're done with this video, go watch it. Number 7. Hajime no Ippo, aka Fighting Spirit.
Okay, I'm going to admit right now that including this on the list is wildly unfair. That's why it's only at number 7. Copies of this are extremely hard to find, and when it comes to this second complete collection, it's virtually impossible. The guy I bought it from said it was only the second he'd ever seen and the only one he'd ever sold. And you know what? I believe him. I've tried to find another one somewhere, anywhere, Craigslist, eBay, wherever, you name it, and they just don't exist. These things are priced in the stratosphere at several $100s each. So for most of you, you're just not going to find them or even get them. My advice would be to start saving up, and if you ever do become lucky enough to stumble across one, bet the farm. But for most of you, the only thing I've got is streaming sites that are questionable at best and nothing more. But you know what? There's someone to blame for this, and it's not me. You know who it is? Of course, it's always Genion. But anyway, let's get into this long-lost classic commonly known as the Punch-Out of anime. It's Hajime no Ippo, aka Fighting Spirit.
Hajime no Ippo follows the titular Ippo as he discovers his desire for the sport of boxing. And honestly, who wouldn't choose a career in boxing over running a fishing boat? Much like Punch-Out, he faces numerous foes with fighting styles all their own as he ascends through the ranks of each boxing circuit. It's classic shonen all the way, but with a lot of heart and its own spin on the genre. It's far closer in execution to the likes of Yu Yu Hakusho than Dragon Ball Z or One Piece, and that definitely works in its favor. There's not a whole lot more to the premise since it's very simple, but it's still great. The animation, at least for the time it was made, is well above average, and it has that classic 80s fight feel, complete with, of course, montages. Seriously, who doesn't actually love a freaking training montage? If you can find it, and I fully believe it's out there, it is well worth your time, and it's a hell of a lot of fun. Whatever you do, never give up your way. Number 6. Gungrave.
You're saying, well, you're a complete idiot. Everyone knows about Gungrave. Well, no, unfortunately they don't. Just because people like me and others my age bought it or saw it around the time it came out, that doesn't mean it's still popular now or even modestly known. For me personally, it's been harder to find someone that's seen Gungrave than someone that's seen Eden of the East. Yes, that's why it's this high on the list. I'm not shitting you.
Gungrave is freaking awesome. There, review over. Oh, okay, fine, I'll tell you more about it. It's like Scarface if Scarface also had monsters, super-powered badasses, and the ability to bring people back from the dead. Its tone is also similar to The Godfather or Goodfellas, creating a heavenly mix of the very best in mafia films from every decade. The story follows Brandon Heat and Harry McDowell, two best friends who rise through the ranks of organized crime only for Harry to eventually turn on Brandon and kill him. But don't worry, I'm not spoiling anything for you here. You find this out in the first episode. Eventually, a rogue scientist revives Brandon in superhuman form as Beyond the Grave, a hulking behemoth with a stupid name, who destroys everything on his way with his trademark guns and coffin cannon. To call this series kick-ass would be significantly lacking. The first episode is a definite misfire. It introduces us to an endless stream of bald exposition and characters we won't meet until the very end of the series. Whatever they were thinking, it's a misguided effort and it falls very flat. However, Trigun director Yosuke Kuroda hits the ground running in episode 2 and never lets up. If you want to see one of the best gunslingers in one of the best crime dramas ever told in anime form, Gungrave is your first and only stop. Number 5. Welcome to the NHK.
Japan is a unique country. What else can you say about a nation that causes its young people to exile themselves from the culture en masse, to the point that it's actually become a national crisis and officially designated as a social disorder?
I'm speaking, of course, about hikikomori, a phenomenon in Japan that has been spreading like wildfire over the last several years. Younger adults, the average age of a current hikikomori is 31, are confining themselves in their homes, only sometimes leaving to work menial jobs and completely excising themselves from social life. Period. There are numerous explanations for the widespread behavior, but all of them are intrinsic to Japanese culture and society. Enter Tatsuhiko Takimoto, who beat the curve in 2007 with his novel Welcome to the NHK. The story, as in the anime, revolves around a modern hikikomori, Tatsuhiro Sato, who has convinced himself of a conspiracy by the Nippon Hoso Kyokai Broadcasting Company, NHK, to create more and more hikikomori throughout Japan. He eventually encounters a girl named Misaki who welcomes him into a social experiment she wants to conduct in order to help him overcome his hikikomori disorder, and, as I've said many times, it's off to the races. However, nothing, and I do mean nothing, is what it seems on the surface. This anime is an extremely enigmatic one. I've never seen anything else like it. The story is, at times, psychedelic and abstract, but it can also be very comedic when it wants to. However, when it gets serious, it is deathly serious. Under other conditions, in other series, I might object to such dramatic swings in tone, but with the way this series conducts itself, it makes total sense. All of the characters are so unique and fully fleshed out that you can't abandon them, even at the point when you might legitimately despair for them. It's a one of a kind in a way that sets it apart and makes it one of the best anime of all time. When, not if, you go looking for it, you can find the Save Edition for under $20 at Amazon, or stream it straight from Funimation. But trust me when I say, there are few anime that grab hold of you as strongly as Welcome to the NHK does. It will be an experience you will never forget. Number 4. Millennium Actress.
In 2010, a tragedy rocked the anime industry and Japanese culture in general. Satoshi Kon, one of the greatest directors of all time, died at the age of 46 from pancreatic cancer. In his wake, he's left us with some of the greatest anime productions and films of all time. And today, I present you with his great love story, Millennium Actress.
Beginning in 1930s Japan at the height of the Chinese War and under the curtain of a military state, young Chiyoko encounters an artist on the run from the government for being a military dissenter. During their brief one-night encounter, she becomes smitten with the man, and when he's forced to flee the next day, she accepts an offer to be an actress in war propaganda films in order to track him down. The story is told to us by present-day Chiyoko at the end of her life, having suddenly retired from acting some years earlier and giving her first interview in decades. The story itself is shown to us through real events in her life and scenes from her films. As the two different mediums become harder and harder to distinguish from one another, we see how real every part of this woman's life was on or off the screen. How every single role she played and every single part she took was all part of a passionate, unceasing quest to be reunited with the man she had fallen in love with. It is a tale of love, tragedy, heartbreak, and happiness unlike anything you've ever seen. It may not be the best project Satoshi Kon has ever put out, but that cannot diminish its power and emotional impact. Sadly, it's been out of print for quite a while, but used copies like the one I own can still be had for less than $30 on Amazon or eBay. It is definitely worth the investment because that's what it truly is, an investment in the enrichment of your life. Number 3. Steins Gate.
Yes, I know. Honestly, I do. I get it. But do you know how many people I've talked to over the years who have no idea what Steins Gate is? Again, thousands of people in front of me, entire crowds. I had a guy go off on a tangent for upwards of 15 minutes about Record of Lodoss War and Claymore, but he'd never even heard of Steins Gate. I mean, it's not like it was the #1 ranked anime of all time on ANN for over a year or anything. It's not like it's probably the best science fiction time travel story ever told. It's fucking Steins Gate, people! Fix your shit!
In 2011, Steins Gate took the anime scene by storm after the roaring success of its visual novel counterpart in late 2009, and quickly became one of the highest rated anime series of all time. For many who are probably unaware, Steins Gate is about eclectic, neat, and self-proclaimed mad scientist Okabe Rintaro, who, with the aid of his friends and a bizarre one-in-a-million coincidence, actually invents time travel. He is joined by the brilliant Makise Kurisu, a female Japanese physics genius, as the crew attempts to unravel the strands of this monumental discovery and what it could all possibly mean. It all leads to a horrifying climax that changes the course of the series permanently, as the remaining half of the show becomes about facing up to your mistakes and atoning for past sins. It's not only a morality play, but the most solid time travel story ever written, without peer. I have watched this series 3 times and have yet to uncover a single plot hole, a single flaw in the story as presented. Instead, it becomes a heartfelt journey of wonder and grief, of love and sacrifice. The characters are some of the best written I've ever seen. I found it impossible to not sympathize with any of them, even the damn villains. So if you don't know about this show, if you've never seen it, you have a civic duty to yourself as an anime fan and the American anime community at large to seek this out and see it now. Buy the game on Steam, buy the show on Amazon, and then buy it again. Then buy the new PS4 sequel, Steins Gate Zero, and shove it in your friend's dinner. Make your friends watch it, and make sure more people find out about this incredible diamond begging for sunlight to gleam. You will not be sorry, except for taking so long to find it. That you should definitely apologize for. Number 2. The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya.
When I first started watching anime back in 2010, a particularly demanding and insistent friend of mine was harassing me into the ground to watch The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya. It got to the point where I swore I would never, ever watch it. But as we all know, nothing lasts forever, so early in 2016 I sat down to give it a watch, and honestly, I loved it. Unfortunately, by the time I did, Bandai had jettisoned it into the depths of space and it had gone out of print. So now I am doing everything I can to make sure people are aware of this series, and I need your help. Everyone needs to see this.
The Melancholy of Haruhi Suzumiya has a complicated story. It starts out with an average high school guy, eventually nicknamed Kyon, encountering the titular Haruhi, an event that changes his life forever. Haruhi's a spunky, irreverent, careless, and unfortunately self-absorbed girl who sets out to find aliens, time travelers, and espers because everyone else is just too boring. Yeah, that's literally what she says. Coincidentally, right around this time, an alien android, an esper, and a time traveler just happen to show up. I know, it sounds fucking ridiculous, right? It sounds like one of the silliest, dumbest premises to anything you've ever seen. However, this is anime we're talking about, not some try-hard student art film. The show is populated by characters that develop into the closest thing you can find to real people. They all have weaknesses, they all have talents, they all have good points, but they also all have flaws. There are things about each and every one of them that you are not meant to like. You aren't meant to look at these characters, especially Haruhi, and simply like or dislike them. The series is far more demanding than that. Throughout their many misadventures, you grow closer to them just to be pushed back when Haruhi does something that makes you genuinely uncomfortable. But despite it, you don't hate her, you don't want to hate her. It's a type of complicated storytelling you don't often see, and it's the last thing you'd expect from something that sounds like word salad on paper. The first season was a hit, but after the infamous Infinite 8 debacle in the second season, viewership dropped off and the show was wrapped up, or so to speak, with a film sequel, The Disappearance of Haruhi Suzumiya, that clocks in at nearly 3 hours and on its own is considered one of the greatest anime of all time. Up until this last year, the series was stranded in limbo by Bandai's refusal to care about anime, but Funimation snapped it up and brought it back into the light. The entire series, including the first 2 seasons, can be had for $43.79 on Amazon, and the entire series can be streamed at Funimation.com. Unfortunately, the movie sequel is a different story, as there are no signs of Funimation re-releasing it or streaming it, so if Disappearance is going to be on your list as well, be ready to shell out the big bucks. Either way, you have your excuse now, so get out there and have some fun. And the number 1 best anime you've never seen is...
Before we get to that, let's first rattle off a list of honorable mentions that didn't quite make the list, but are still definitely worth your time.
Baki the Grappler. It's a story about a badass being a badass and fighting other kids in badass ways. What else do you need to know? Ouran High School Host Club. It's a fun show about a girl pretending to be a boy. Hey man, it's funny, I don't care. The Girl Who Leapt Through Time, a film about a girl who accidentally stumbles upon a time travel device and her many adventures. Trust me, it's great. Serial Experiments Lane. It's David Lynch's anime, or so to speak. It's bizarre, it's all over the place, it's crazy, you gotta watch it. Fruits Basket. A great show with not much going on. It's innocent and fun, and if you're into slice of life anime, maybe check it out. Ghost Hound, a pseudo-horror series about kids that learn about astral projection and take on spirits in several different forms. Warning though, it can be pretty disturbing at times, so use your own discretion. And Boogie Pop Phantom. If you've already seen Serial Experiments Lane or anything like it in the whole bizarre, psychologically messed up situation, then you'll love Boogie Pop Phantom, as it's about a series haunted by a specter, of course, called the Phantom. I recommend it if that's your type of thing.
Okay, there. You got your work cut out for you. But now it's finally time. This is the #1 best anime you've never seen. Satoshi Kon made an anime. Is there anything else I should have to tell you?
The late Mr. Cohn was at a creative crossroads. He had a whole bunch of ideas swirling in his head, but none of them were big enough on their own to make a movie out of, and combining any of them together became too much for a movie to handle. So what did he do? He metaphorically dumped the contents of his analogical junk drawer into a something bag and called it an anime. And that anime is Paranoia Agent, undoubtedly one of the greatest of all time. The story centers around Tsukiko Sagi, a plush character designer under massive pressure after her previous creation, Moromi, became the hottest selling kids plush toy in all of Japan. Struggling to come up with new ideas and facing an impending deadline, she is seemingly attacked one night by a young boy with a bat. That's the best description I can give without truly spoiling anything, as this series is anything but straightforward. By the halfway point of the series, it becomes increasingly metaphysical and abstract, eventually morphing into the equivalent of a David Lynch film on mescaline. It's pure insanity, and everything about it becomes spellbinding. It's the epitome of true horror, a show that grips you and doesn't let go, dragging you down into its abyss, only finally letting you up for air at the very end. You will be wowed by the series' never more relevant social commentary about the stresses on a society and the dangers of addiction to escapism. Now for the bad news. Sadly, the series is outlandishly expensive thanks to fucking Geneon yet again, so unless you want to shell out several $100s, you're going to have to go with a shady pirated streaming site. But hey, do what you have to. Find this show. It will change your life and you will never regret it. And that is how you end a top 25.
Do you have an anime or two that you think everyone needs to see? Tell us all about it in the comments below. And if you can, let us know where we can find it so we can get in on the fun ourselves. Until next time, I'm Will Ryan. Stay skeptical.
King